Welcome back to 100 Lies the God Culture teaches about the Philippines. Today's lie concerns the Santo Niño which Magellan gifted to the natives of Cebu. Timothy J. Schwab says after Magellan was killed they rejected that statue. As we shall see, this is another of Tim's many lies. This is another lie that is easily disproved if one reads the sources rather than cherry-pick them for quotes. Magellan gave the king of Cebu the Santo Niño. Tim says when Magellan was killed, Lapu-Lapu took the statue as a trophy of war to Mactan and it was never worshipped.
Now, what happened to this Santo Niño child after that? Well, they recorded. Cebu didn't even keep it. It turns out, according to the letter from the royal officials, that's people like Legazpi and all of the different captains and generals and whatever titles of the Philippines, so the Spanish royal officials, that is, writing from Cebu in 1565. This is their actual letter, translated into English as published in the encyclopedia series called The Philippine Islands. This is volume 2, number 55. About as credible and widely published as a history can get, in fact. And by the way, so is Pigafetta's journal, which we used before. It sits in the British Museum, the Italian Museum, and Yale University to this day. This is real history. Your textbook, not so much. Now let's read their actual words here. We stopped at an island where Magellan's men were killed. Where's that? That is Mactan, not Cebu. Get that? In other words, Lapu-Lapu's island. That's where they are in this narrative. He then writes, we landed our men and disposed the artillery of the ships. They were attacking Mactan in response to their killing Magellan before, of course, which were close to the houses of the town, so that the firing of the artillery from the said ships and the arquebuses on land drove the enemy away. But we were unable to capture any of them, imagine that, because they had their fleet ready for the sea. Smart Filipinos, they were expecting this. They abandoned their houses, and we found in them nothing. Hear that? Nothing, except an image of the child Jesus, and 2 culverines, one of iron and one of bronze, which can be of no service to us. It is believed that they were brought here at the time of Magellan. This is the Santo Niño. Did you get this? The Santo Niño that Magellan brought. The same one that is enshrined in the bulletproof glass, paraded around on Santo Niño Day as Jesus. It was not found in Cebu. So Cebu shouldn't even be keeping this festival. And the other people were not worshiping it. Cebu was not worshiping it. It wasn't there. It was found with Lapu-Lapu's people on Mactan. You know, the ones who rejected first and killed Magellan. It was likely given to Lapu-Lapu as a sort of trophy for his role, which inspired the king of Cebu to follow and kill Barbosa and the other leaders. It was not being worshipped. And what a statement. Everything was removed from these houses. Got that? Everything except this Santo Niño and 2 other gifts that Magellan had given. And not to Mactan and Lapu-Lapu, no, these are gifts Magellan gave to the king of Cebu and the queen. The king of Cebu and his people rejected Catholicism. They did not worship this statue. Yeah, there was a 3-week or so period, but that was it. In the end, they rejected. And Lapu-Lapu's people most certainly did not worship it. In fact, even here, 40 years later, they left it sitting there with just 2 culverines. That's it. Nothing else. This was a statement saying, This is not ours. You can have it back. If they worshipped it, or if it had any value, they would have taken it with them. After all, the Spanish would not have even expected to find this statue among the inhabitants of Mactan, of all places, as they are the ones who rebelled first. Nothing in the narrative fits what we're being told.
Tim says the same thing in his book The Search for King Solomon's Treasure. This letter is in a book of other documents about the same events. It is a brief description of the Spaniards landing in Cebu and finding the Santo Niño. From the very book Tim quotes, The Philippine Islands, 1493 to 1803, Volume 2, 1521 to 1569. We read the following more detailed account.
The fleet set sail for Cebu, where after landing they found the village deserted. In this town when we entered we found therein a child Jesus. A sailor named Mermia found it. It was in a wretched little house, and was covered with a white cloth in its cradle, and its little bonnet quite in order. The tip of its nose was rubbed off somewhat, and the skin was coming off the face.
Mactan is right next to Cebu. It would not be surprising if these new arrivals mixed up Mactan and Cebu. In fact, Legazpi makes this same conflation in this very volume.
To the Sacred Catholic Majesty, because General Miguel Lopez de Legazpi is giving your Majesty a full account of events throughout these districts. Therefore we shall say only that we remain in your Majesty's royal service in these Filipinas, in that part where the men of Magellanus were killed, called the island of Cebu, under the protection of God, our Lord, and awaiting that of your Majesty, and we remain here with very great necessity.
He is also wrong that the natives did not worship the Santo Niño. They admitted they did so. Antonio Morga writes the following about Legazpi's mission to the Philippines and the finding of the Santo Niño.
He pursued his voyage until he arrived at the island of Cebu, where he anchored, on account of the convenience of a good port which he met with, and the nature of the land. He was at first well and peacefully received by the natives and by their chief Tupos. The first of our Spanish settlements was made in that port, which they named the City of the Most Holy Name of Jesus, because they found there, in one of the houses of the natives when they conquered them, a carved image of Jesus, and it was believed that it had remained there from the fleet of Magellan, and the natives held it in great reverence, and it worked for them in their needs miraculous effects.
It is simply not true that the Santo Niño was not found in Cebu or that it was not worshipped. To this day its finding in Cebu is celebrated every year by devotees and the people continue to pray to it for miracles. Timothy J. Schwab's claim to the contrary is another lie. He teaches about the history of the Philippines.